Where were you on August 3rd, 2021? I can tell you where I was. I was at a corporate building on Park Avenue, packing up my desk at one of the largest hedge funds in the world and saying goodbye to the corporate world. My name is Erin Donahue, and I'm a photographer and content creator based out of New York City. Today, in my little corner of the internet, I want to share with you the last 3 years of my life. I've been working for myself, a solopreneur, if you will. Whenever the topic comes up, and I've talked to my friends, for instance, and we talk about it's only been 3 years since I've been doing this full time. And that's the reaction. It's only been 3 years. It feels so much longer than that. Funny enough, 3 years is actually still less time than I spent at my last job. And that's how my brain thinks in terms of job longevity. On a macro level, I've had some major wins, but my day-to-day overall hasn't really changed. I still live in the same apartment. I sit behind a computer most of the day. I'm not a millionaire yet. I didn't have that I made it moment that changes the trajectory of your life like some people have had. It's still very much a grind where the highs are highs and the lows are lows. Always feeling like one step forward and 2 steps backward. You get the idea. Every year on the anniversary of my Great Resignation, I take some time to reflect where I started, where I'm at now, and lessons I've learned along the way. So let's rewind to the beginning. My love for photography actually began in high school. I picked up my first SLR camera in a photography class. I think I was like a sophomore in high school. Actually, before I even picked up an SLR, a lesson was with a pinhole camera. So I was learning about light through pinhole photography. But it wasn't until after college where I really got the bug for photography. What's funny is back then, I never thought there was any money in any creative field, even though I always actually did consider myself some form of creative. I wasn't one of those artsy introverted types. I did sports. I very much got FOMO if I wasn't at like a party or something. I'm partying at 15. And so naturally I went into business because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, who does at that age? But I'm a believer in everything happens for a reason. Am I right? That business background taught me about routine, structure, how to be a professional, which I think really gives me a leg up compared to my peers in the industry. Now, because I was a broke college student who had been working since I was 15, I'd always been hustling, trying to make money in some way, especially while I was going to school. One of those ways was attempting to be a commercial model. I even had a Model Mayhem account, like who remembers those, where I did trade shoots, TFP shoots with photographers. And their vision never aligned with mine. And that's when I realized, like, I think I prefer to be behind the camera because I see things in a certain way that I want to capture. Side note, I know the photographer is the one supposed to be with the vision, not the model. Hence why I think I decided to go that route. So fast forward a few years, I'm working at my first big girl job out of college at an asset manager, making only 45 grand, which is ironic, I know. And what was my first big purchase with my paycheck? A Sony Alpha 6000. This is when mirrorless cameras were just starting to break into the DSLR industry as disruptors, and they were such a game changer. APS-Cs allowed me to get into the industry. Being in a soul-crushing dead-end corporate job, photography was my creative outlet, and I would take pictures of my commute on the way home back to Jersey. It took me years to learn how to shoot in manual mode. Something about shutter speed just did not click with me at the time. I finally figured it out around 2018, and that's where you start to see a shift in my photography. So for a good 4 years, I was just on auto mode. And then also during this time is when blogging, content creation, creator economy, gig economy was just starting to pick up. The amount of resources, information that we have today did not exist pre-2017, 2018. So it was harder to make the jump into the unknown. I wish I was ballsier back then because this is when the thoughts started to fester in my mind to make a pivot. I just wasn't ready to do it. I knew deep down I couldn't stay working in a corporate job for the rest of my life, like 40 years, working for someone else. Also during this time, I had done a trip to New Zealand and I had met other travelers, tourists who had left their miserable jobs in their home countries, took a pay cut to come here, and they were much happier, even though it was a service role. Because New Zealand has a visa program where you can work, but people use that to their advantage and then they're traveling around the country for a whole year. And this was really reinforcing in my head. There are other paths out there. I need to see what's out there. Also back then, there was someone I knew who was an investment banker, but she would also do influencing on the side. And this is when influencer marketing was just starting to pick up. Back then I looked down on her for doing that, but low-key in my brain, I was actually pretty envious of her. Ironically, she's still within investment banking and she stayed in corporate versus me actually going out on my own. So we did kind of like a switcheroo there. And then there was another important example that I took to heart. One of my old boss's clients, who was a college student at the time, made like 70 grand from a meme account. This is when meme and repost accounts were very popular. A smart person would have recognized immediately this was a business opportunity and to get in now. But I just didn't see the potential back then and I missed that train and I kick myself over for it every day. Anyway, my first photography client came around 2019 when I was just starting to dabble and see if I can make photography as a side hustle, make some money with it. I think a lot of photographers have this come up in story where back then when Instagram was exclusively a photo sharing app, you post your pictures, your family and friends that follow you see your pictures and they're like, oh, I know someone that takes pictures. I want them to take my portraits, and they reach out to you. And you're like, sure, I could do it for like $50. I could do it for free or whatever. And then you make real money taking pictures. And then the rest is history. Now, let's talk about the reality of being an entrepreneur, solopreneur, freelancer, whatever the hell you want to call it. So in 2021, I quit my corporate job to pursue photography, content creation full time. This and most entrepreneurial paths are lonely. Everyone in my existing network cannot relate to this lifestyle. They're in the 9 to 5 routine, 9 to 6, 8 to 6, whatever, and I'm out here hustling completely from scratch. Finding people who can relate to this lifestyle and who are genuine is really hard. Finding mentors is hard. If you can find a good mentor, stick with them. Success is not linear, and the comparison game is something I struggle with a lot. I have to remind myself every day, everyone goes at their own pace, and I have to put the blinders on. And then the biggest challenge, constant rejection. The reality is you have to constantly be pitching yourself to get your name out there, to get seen, not wait for the brands or whatever to come to you. I would say like for every 10 no's, there's one yes. So whenever I get those rejections, I have to remind myself to not take it personally, which is very hard. Again, you need to be proactive in doing this to get your name out there rather than just sitting around waiting for someone to come into your inbox. That being said, and this is pretty cool, and probably my biggest flex to date, two of the biggest companies in the world, Apple and Google, came to me, and then Sony also came to me actually. So I might have peaked already. As of the making of this video, I've been hosting weekly photo walks for Google, but it's a constant dose of humble pie because the turnout is very, very small. However, I am obviously very grateful for the opportunities that I get. But anyway, this is why you have to put yourself out there, put your work out there, even if it's not perfect. I'm very much of the mindset, do like the 85% rather than 100. I am not a perfectionist. On this topic, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Money. Realistically, I'm not making that much. I'm living on my savings in between deals, and then whatever I do make, I reinvest back into the business or pay rent. And that's freelance life for you. But I went into it knowing that, expecting that. Some might say, give up, quit. But I'm in this for the long haul, and sometimes businesses take time to become profitable. Before I quit my corporate job to do this full time, my mind was already made that this is a do or die situation, like I'm gonna stick this out. It was none of that, oh, well, I'm gonna give it a year, and then if things don't work out, I'll go back to my corporate job. None of that. If you have that mental safety net, you'll never go all out. You'll never see your true potential with this. For me, my why is I really don't want to work for someone else ever again, and that's a great motivator. When I first pivoted, I spoke with a personal branding photographer based out of the Bay Area who gave me some great advice early on. She said, and contrary to what probably a lot of photographers say, which they say pick up every job, she said, don't pick up every job, especially low-paying ones, because time is money. To be able to do this though, I saved up a lot to be able to float myself financially. I paid off all my student loans before I left. I've always paid my credit card bills on time, so I have absolutely no debt to worry about. These were very intentional steps to set myself up for success, so I'm not burdening my future self. Now, the big question is, should you make this kind of move? And that's a question I can't answer for you. You have to ask yourself that. How badly do you want it? In my experience, most don't want it badly enough. Like I said earlier, it's a pretty lonely path. Most of your friends and family won't be able to relate to this lifestyle. Is that something you're okay with? I am. Since I made this jump 3 years ago, I don't know anyone in my network, in my circles, who have done this kind of thing like I have. People that have come to me, say they want to do something entrepreneurial, but then admittedly, they're too scared, too chicken to do this. That being said, if you can hold down a W-2 job, one that you're happy in, while pursuing something more of a side hustle, then maintain that. That's more ideal. I didn't have a good work environment. That's why I made the jump. I didn't want to give my time to someone else for 40, 60 hours a week. I do recommend working a corporate job if you can, because it will give you that business structure for when you decide to run your own business. If you're going all in like I did, this is what I can recommend to you. Save up enough money to cushion your finances. Pay off any debt you have. And be prepared for a lot of rejections. Treat it like a business. Open an LLC, or at the very least, get an EIN, and then get a CPA who understands what you do. Before I end this video, I want to share with you some of my wins from the last 3 years. In year one, my number one dream brand, Sony, reached out to me to partner together. I went mega viral on TikTok with my light painting videos. I had amassed like 26 million views. Year two was pretty quiet. I did get invited to Sony Cando, which was a really big deal. And then I got to go on some press trips, and one of them actually led to one of my paying clients for year three. Year three is where we are currently, and this is what's happened so far. I finally landed my first 5-figure paying client. That was great. Both Apple and Google reached out to me and sent me their newest phones, but one of them I'm actually working with. What keeps me going is I genuinely enjoy what I'm doing. Reading books that are geared towards money mindset, wealth mindset, things like that really keeps things in check. Mindset is super important when you work alone. Even though I've taken a severe pay cut since I started, my business has actually been net positive. So it's not seen as a hobby in the eyes of the IRS. That's a big deal in maintaining and running a business. And there you have it, my journey as a full-time photographer and content creator in the past 3 years in a nutshell. It's been challenging and rewarding and everything in between. If you're thinking about making the jump, I hope this gives you some insight into what it's like. Remember, your path is your own. Embrace it, learn from it, keep it moving. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.